Do you know you've been on his mind like since before Genesis 1:1, before time began? You and I were on the mind of God. And there has been a cosmic battle in the heavenlies that have been taking place and has been working itself out throughout history. There has been a battle between God and the enemy for your soul, my friend. I want you to think about it like a giant chessboard, and you've got God sitting on one side and you've got the enemy on the other side, and they are both vying for your soul. So Genesis 1:1 opens and God makes the first move. He creates Adam and Eve in a perfect scenario with perfect fellowship with him. But then the enemy, not to be outdone, he decides to make a move. He slithers his way into the garden. He causes sin to enter into the scenario and into the hearts of man. Before you know it, Cain kills Abel, and now murder is on the scene, and it seems like everything will always be separated now from a holy God. But our God, never to be outdone, on the other side of that cosmic chessboard, he makes another move. He causes Adam and Eve to come back together, and they give birth to a little baby named Enosh. Or Seth, rather, and Seth gives birth to Enosh, and Genesis 4 says that when Enosh was born, everybody began to praise God again. But the enemy, not to be outdone, on the other side of that cosmic chessboard, he makes a move. He causes rebellion to seep back into the hearts of mankind. It proliferates across the earth, so much so that the world has to be destroyed. But our God, never to be outdone, he makes another move. He finds this guy named Noah, and he says, Noah, go build an ark. Noah says, build a what? He says, I want you to build an ark. And so Noah obediently builds an ark, and mankind is preserved as a result of his obedience. But the enemy makes another move, and rebellion seeps back into the hearts of mankind, proliferates across the earth, but our God makes another move. And he goes to this little pagan town called Ur, and he finds a man named Abram, and he raises him up, and he says, I'm going to change your name, and I'm going to change your destiny. And I'm going to create a brand new nation out of you called the nation of Israel. And these people are going to bear the stamp of my name and my protection and my provision, and my favor will always be upon them. The enemy, not to be outdone, he made another move. And he caused now the nation of Israel, God's chosen people, to go into Egypt. And for 400 years, Pharaoh had them completely bound. And it looked like the enemy had won. But our God, never to be outdone, he makes another move. And he finds this little baby boy named Moses, and he causes Moses to be raised as the prince of Egypt. And then at the right time, he sends Moses to Pharaoh, and he says, you go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And after 10 miraculous plagues, they are released from captivity. For 40 years, they are in the wilderness, but then they come into the promised land. But the enemy wants to make another move. And he causes now the children of Israel to turn their back on Yahweh, the one true God, and they begin to worship idols. By the time you get to the end of the book of Judges, the last line of the book of Judges says this: everyone was doing what was right in their own eyes. But our God, never to be outdone, he makes another move, and he goes to this little town called Moab, and he raises up a woman named Ruth. And Ruth has tragedy in her life. She has chaos in her life, and it looks like no good will come of it until she meets her kinsman redeemer. And she and her kinsman redeemer have a baby called Obed, and Obed gives birth to Jesse, and Jesse gives birth to a baby boy named David. And with that one move, the enemy doesn't even know that the checkmate is already on the way. Doesn't even know. Amen. And as the Old Testament comes to a close, y'all, there are 400 years of silence. And God is on one side of the chessboard, the enemy is on the other, and it is completely silent. And all of history waits to see who's going to make the next move. And then the New Testament opens. And God makes a move that the enemy to this day still has not had a response for. Jesus Christ comes, and he dies on the cross for you and me, and the victory is sealed once and for all. Amen. Praise the Lord. And he did that for you, and he did it for me.